The Volquest 2-minute drill is brought to you by Craven Wings.
With Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com, it is the Craven Wings Full Court Press. Don't forget our good friends at Craven Wings. They got their 4th annual Grim Reaper Challenge beginning this week with the semifinals at Foothills. Second semifinals is Chodo on Saturday the 18th, and the third semifinal is the 25th in Seymour. That's at Craven Wings. We appreciate their support of Volquest.com. It might not be a wing challenge for Tennessee, but Rob Lewis, it is time for Tennessee to get back on the horse after snatching defeat from the jaws of victory this week for the Volunteers as a very disappointing 86-85 loss to Missouri.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of basketball, Hubbard. I know you have too. I don't think I've ever seen two games back to back that were lost on buzzer beating three balls. And today, I mean, it really just felt like, I don't know that it ever felt like Tennessee was completely in control at Vanderbilt. Kind of did, but today, I mean, really, I mean, the way they swung momentum in the second half in the final 10 minutes, I mean, this place was absolutely rocking. Tennessee had some swagger. And, it really felt like Missouri was unraveling. And then obviously that is not what happened in those last few minutes. I mean, Missouri shot the eyes out all day long. And obviously, Vescovi, tough spot for that kid. I mean, the second time in 3 days that he goes to the line in the last seconds with a chance to ice it and doesn't get it done. And man, for about 15 minutes there, it felt like we were all going to be writing and researching, what's Tennessee's biggest second half comeback in program history. And instead, we're talking about a last second loss.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here in this thing. Let's start with Vescovi from a bigger picture standpoint. He's a senior. He's played a ton of basketball, Rob, but this is back-to-back games where he's had a chance to close out a game and he hasn't. Any concern on your part about that becoming a mental hurdle for him moving forward when you get into tournament-style basketball, possession-by-possession games, close games at the end?
Maybe I'm being naive, Hubbard. I just don't think so. I mean, he's a tough kid, and he plays. He's gritty, and I think he's got the mental toughness to get through it. But man, I mean, it's something to watch. I wouldn't totally discount it, but I do think that he will overcome it. He's just made too many big shots, too many big trips to the free throw line, in tight games and in the last couple minutes for me to that he's suddenly just gonna, forget to be clutch. So I'm not saying we should ignore it, but I think he will come out the other side of it.
All right, so Tennessee gives up 86 points. It's the most points they've given up in a game this season. We've talked all year about defense traveling. It did not travel today. You mentioned Missouri shooting the lights out, 53% from the field, 54% from the three-point line, 14 of 26. What is your takeaway from Tennessee defensively on a day where they gave up points like we've not seen this team give up all year long?
No, not at all. And I'm not saying that they would have won this game without Josiah or with Josiah. I'd be surprised if the defense wasn't better with Josiah, on the floor for 20, 25 minutes. But again, Rick certainly didn't come close to using that as an excuse. But to me, I mean, the concern is the 3-point shooting, where Tennessee has just been great this year defensively. Vanderbilt hits 10, Missouri hits 14. It's not just the percentage, it's the volume. And I don't know. Rick seemed like he didn't have a problem with the looks. They had some contested shots. They banked one into the first half. Still, though, 14 threes is 14 threes. And I just wonder, again, I'm sure Josiah not playing had something to do with that. Julian Phillips, takes a really long athletic defender off the court. He didn't play after halftime after the hip injury. But, that's something for me to keep an eye on, is how Tennessee went from just being able to put people in jail on the perimeter to, in the last two games here, they've given up 24 3-pointers.
Then the other factor to me that stood out is the fact that Zakai Ziegler got 3 fouls in a minute and 27 seconds in the final 4:15 of the basketball game. For a guy that you have to have on the floor, Rob, I mean, that's not heady basketball for a guy who's a heady basketball player. This is 2 games in a row he's battled some foul trouble. Now, this one down the stretch is something he hasn't done. What do you make of the fouls, 84 feet from the basket, and just kind of the lack of IQ at that point he's had down the stretch there?
That's the one that jumps out at me, Hubbard. And he was having a great. I mean, he wasn't shooting it well, but I mean, he had 11 points and 10 assists. I mean, he was carving Missouri up, getting easy buckets for people. And yeah, the fifth one you're talking about occurred with about 2.5 minutes left. That's the one you just can't have your point guard make. I mean, Zakai, he's a sophomore, but I mean, he's played a ton of basketball. He's a veteran. I mean, nobody considers him anything but a veteran and a team leader. And yeah, I mean, you can't make that foul. Missouri ends up getting. I think the guy hit 1 or 2, but it's more importantly to me is that maybe Santiago is not at the foul line with 4 seconds left if Zakai's not on the bench with 5 fouls.
Yeah, it certainly was a key play. Now, on the bright side, Tennessee gets 23 points out of Tyrique Key, who started hunting a shot in the second half. He was hot. He was feeling it, particularly from the left side of the floor. How big of a deal potentially is that for this basketball team? I'm not saying get 23 a night and make 5 of 7, but if he starts to play with some aggression offensively here, how big of a deal is that for Tennessee?
Well, I think it's a really big deal. And he doesn't have to score 23 a night, but if he could average double digits, which I think is pretty reasonable, but I mean, it would also just about be doubling his output in SEC play. But I think what makes it even more encouraging, Hubbard, is you look at what he did Wednesday at Vandy when he scored 14. He had 10 in the first half. Same deal, way more aggressive when the ball came his way and he had a crease. He was ready to fire. I just think he finally really gets it that the team, they need him to be that guy. They don't, and maybe he's hunting his shot more with Josiah on the bench. Maybe that's a byproduct of that. I don't know, but yeah, clearly for a team that struggles to score the way this Tennessee team has struggled at times this year, if you can have a guy like Tyrique suddenly find some confidence, I don't want to make too much of it, but yeah, I think it could be really significant.
All right, my last question to you. Tennessee had a 6-point lead at Florida. Looked like they were gaining control midway through the second half, and Florida rattles off a run. Vanderbilt looked like they had a couple of opportunities to take control of the basketball game and obviously had a chance to close it out, didn't. Same thing with Missouri after the big comeback today. Any concern about this team's suddenly inability to close out basketball games in the second half or even in the final couple of minutes? Again, you're a month away from tournament play where you're going to be in possession games.
Sure. I mean, I think if you're being honest, I mean, you got to call a spade a spade. I mean, those are 3 games. It could have been 3 wins. And Tennessee's still a top 5 basketball team. They're still, in the conversation for a number 1 seed, and those things are gone. I mean, Tennessee's the bigger concern right now is can you be a top 4 seed in Nashville and get a double bye? I mean, that was unthinkable that would be, a concern 2 weeks ago, but it's a real concern right now to finish in the top 4 of this league.
Yeah, crazy to see where basketball is and where this Tennessee team is. The wheels aren't off, but certainly it's been a rough 3 of their last 4 have been losses in SEC play, and the strength of the schedule strength is only going to get heightened here over the course of the final couple of weeks to close out the regular season, because this was supposed to be the quote layup week, right? 2 teams that defensively weren't very good. This is where you get your offense back on track. Both of those were losses. You don't get a reprieve next week with Alabama and a trip to Rupp Arena coming, right?
And then you go to Texas A&M after that. I mean, that's 3 in a row. I mean, the 3 best teams in the league, record-wise, and well, not record-wise, but that you would think would be, and Alabama playing as good as anybody in the country, Kentucky, and who knows what's going on up there right now. But nobody thinks that's going to be anything other than, a slugfest in Rupp next week. And then Texas A&M is playing as good as anybody right now. That's going to be a tough road trip.
Well, and you know how hard they're going to play defensively against you and what they're going to do, because that's the mainstay of what they're about, particularly on their home floor. So we'll see what happens with Tennessee. Can they bounce back? Can they put some of these mojo vibes behind them that are going against them the last 3 of the last 4 conference games that they've played? Full coverage of Tennessee's loss to Missouri, full coverage of Tennessee moving forward against Alabama and Kentucky coming up next week at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Craven Wings Full Court Press.
When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Online at cravenwings.com.